An Arizona teen faces first-degree murder for the brutal shooting of a 17-year-old.
This was a domestic violence offense. Rivera allegedly broke into the victim's home in the middle of the night.
But court documents reveal he allegedly tried to kill someone else that night, too.
This is Inside the Crime, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Elizabeth Millner. Hey, by the way, there's a reason Law&Crime is the go-to spot for true crime content. Just like there's a reason Morgan & Morgan is America's largest personal injury law firm. They have more than 1,000 attorneys and have recovered $25 billion from more than 500,000 clients. In the past few months alone, a client in Florida received $12 million when insurance offered just $350,000. And in Pennsylvania, another client was awarded $26 million. 40 times the insurer's offer. Morgan & Morgan makes it so easy to fight for what you deserve, you can even start a claim from your phone. So if you're injured, you can start a claim at forthepeople.com/insidethecrime. Click the link below or scan the QR code on your screen. 17-year-old Rhiana Kemplin was in her home asleep when a masked gunman entered her home and murdered her. Police say this wasn't random. The victim had a previous relationship with the suspect.
Rhiana Kemplin was a high school senior at Agua Fiera High School in Arizona. Just months away from graduation, she already had a plan for herself. She was planning to continue her education at Arizona State University, where she would continue playing in band, while also pursuing a career in cosmetology. But she was never given the chance to pursue her dreams to the fullest. On November 8th, officers in Avondale, Arizona were dispatched to the Rio Santa Fe apartments on reports of a shooting. That call came in around 6:30 that morning and came from inside Rhiana's home. When officers arrived, they found her shot and rushed her to the hospital, where she was reportedly declared brain dead. She passed away later that afternoon from her injuries. Initially, the victim's name wasn't released due to her age, but a GoFundMe verified the victim was Rhiana Kemplin. In the description, the organizer wrote, quote, "Our hearts are shattered. In the early morning hours of November 8th, my beloved daughter Rhiana Kemplin was tragically and senselessly taken from us, murdered in her sleep with a gunshot to her head, leaving an immense void in the lives of everyone who knew and loved her. Riri was a beautiful soul inside and out. She was beyond years, talented with music and makeup, and had the biggest heart. The most loyal friend. She protected all those around her and was incredibly witty, not to mention funny. Tiny as she was, her spirit tripled that. At just 17, she had a whole lifetime ahead of her, filled with potential and dreams of graduating high school, then cosmetology, and also continued her education at ASU and playing in the band there. Her infectious laugh and kind spirit will be missed every single day." On November 14th, officers made an arrest in the case, charging 18-year-old Emilio Rivera in connection to Rhiana's death. But who is Emilio? Well, court documents reveal Emilio and Rhiana used to date. According to the court documents reviewed by AZ Family, Emilio was actually arrested on the day of the shooting for allegedly slashing tires on more than a dozen cars last weekend. But that does go into this case, and I'll explain more in a second. According to the court documents, Rhiana's mom was suddenly awoken when her bedroom door was forced open. Rhiana's mom reportedly wasn't named in the court documents. She told detectives a man wearing a black hoodie, black pants, and something covering his mouth like a mask was pointing a gun at her. Rhiana's mom said the gunman pulled the trigger, and the gun made a clicking sound, but didn't fire. She begged the gunman not to shoot her, but he kept trying to fire the weapon. When he wasn't able to shoot Rhiana's mom, she said he ran out of the apartment. When she went to check on her daughter, she initially believed the 17-year-old was just asleep. She called 911 to report the gunman breaking into her home, and when she returned back to Rhiana's room, that's when she discovered her daughter had been shot on the right side of her head, near the temple. According to court documents, the bullet exited the left side of her head and hit her left hand. She was taken to the hospital and later passed away. Rhiana's mom revealed to detectives her daughter and Emilio's relationship was hostile. Rhiana's mom reportedly didn't allow him into the apartment because they fought so much. But here's what court documents also reveal. Emilio lives nearby, about a 6-minute walk away from Rhiana's home. Police say he denied shooting her or even having any weapons on him. But investigators say Emilio texted Rhiana on November 7th around 11 p.m. asking her if he could come over, and she said yes. He reportedly arrived to her apartment around 11:45 on the 7th, but the two got into a fight that night. Emilio told detectives that he searched Rhiana's phone and found out she had been cheating on him. He reportedly told police that fight got physical, that Rhiana was trying to hold him down, but Emilio denied hitting her. He claimed he left the apartment around midnight and talked with a friend until 2 a.m. After that, he went back to Rhiana's home where he used a kitchen knife to allegedly slash 2 to 3 cars' tires because he didn't want his ex-girlfriend to, quote, have the freedom to easily drive around to see other men. Emilio claimed that he went back home around 3:30 in the morning, but returned to the apartment complex to slash more tires because, quote, he felt like the 2 or 3 vehicles he slashed was not enough. Police say in total, he slashed the tires of 14 cars, with damage totaling $2,800 on the low side. When investigators searched Rhiana's room, they found a 9mm shell casing, and after searching Emilio's home, officials found a 9mm Glock 43 handgun in his mom's purse, and also a ski mask. Detectives say Emilio admitted to the tire slashing, but denied killing Rhiana. But he was still charged with her murder, as well as Rhiana's mom's attempted murder.
Mr. Rivera, you are here this afternoon because you were arrested on charges of murder in the first degree. This was a domestic violence offense. Mr. Rivera allegedly broke into the victim's home in the middle of the night and shot her in the head. The victim suffered a gunshot wound to her hand, which is consistent with a defensive wound. There was a ballistics match to a firearm that was found in Mr. Rivera's home.
The judge decided to hold Emilio on a $1 million bond.
Criminal defense attorney Dwayne Cates joins us now to break this down even further. Dwayne, thank you so much for joining me. You know, when you hear about a teenager being shot and killed in her own home while she slept, it's supposed to be one of the safest places out there for somebody. But what's your reaction to this?
Well, I mean, again, this is a tragic result of a really toxic relationship. You know, I mean, the young man came over and slashed the tires of a bunch of people's cars. I mean, he's clearly got some anger issues, and you know, it's a shame that somebody couldn't have spotted this ahead of time and headed it off.
And it seems like investigators are kind of laying out a motive that this was a jealous rage, domestic violence type of killing. And when we talk about the tire slashing, I mean, it was 14 tires, I believe it was. That's a lot of tires, a lot of money in terms of damage. But it really just goes to show the rage that he had, because investigators are saying that he was upset that Rhiana was allegedly cheating on him. And so he didn't want her driving around with other men. And so he slashed all these tires. But what's your thoughts about that amount of rage from an 18-year-old?
Well, you know, I mean, he's clearly got issues, and you know, we really need to find a way to spot those before they turn into people getting shot. You know, and again, with the murders, the case seems a little bit weak from what I read. I mean, they don't have anybody really identifying him as the shooter. They found a shell casing at the house, at the scene, and then they found a gun the same caliber that was in his mom's purse at his home. And so I don't know that they've done the ballistics or not to determine if it was the same gun that fired the bullet, but you know, they need a little bit more, because the mom said he had a mask on, couldn't see him, you know, black hoodie. And so there's got to be more to it.
And I do believe that prosecutors did recently announce during his latest hearing that the ballistics did match the shell casing. So with that being said, how difficult do you think it'll be to defend him as a client?
Well, again, if they have a match on the ballistics, I mean, that's a big step, because, you know, you got to put the gun in his hand. Okay. And again, it's what's called circumstantial evidence. I mean, the gun was found in his mom's purse. It matches the ballistics. You know, it's probably the gun that fired the shot. Probably wasn't mom that fired the shot. So you know, it's going to be a pretty tough case.
Interesting. And it's interesting you think it is a circumstantial case, because I feel like there seems to be, and to your point, I guess I can see why you think it's circumstantial, because it does seem like there's a lot kind of pointing to him, but we still need that concrete evidence there. And in your opinion, what do prosecutors need in order to secure this case as a slam dunk?
Well, you know, people get convicted on circumstantial evidence all the time. So just because it's circumstantial doesn't mean it's not significant. And the ballistics matching is significant. And the fact that they can put him with the knife in his hand, slashing the tires, you know, and being in a jealous rage. I mean, it's not going to be hard for a jury to tie those things together. And this will probably never see a courtroom. This will most likely end up in some sort of plea agreement.
And one other aspect of this case that I find pretty shocking is that in court documents, Rhiana's mom alleges that Emilio Rivera also pointed the gun at her. According to reports, she heard a clicking sound, possibly like the gun ran out of bullets. But overall, this, to me, in my opinion, seems a little premeditated. But what are your thoughts about this?
Well, you know, it sounds like he did that after he he killed his girlfriend. So it wasn't, it wasn't like before. And again, this will probably end up in a second degree murder plea because, a heat of passion, believing that there was that cheating was going on. I mean, it wouldn't be hard to shove it into that. And it's most likely going to end up in a second degree plea. And he'll get significant prison time.
And in terms of him now being charged with first-degree murder as well as second-degree attempted murder, do you think that it's possible that prosecutors overcharge with the first-degree murder aspect?
Well, not really. Again, like you said, it's got aspects of premeditation. So, you could see that he slashed the tires and then most likely went home and got a gun and came back. That would be clear premeditation. So they'd have to establish the timeline on that. But I don't think they overcharged it, but they always try to leave room to negotiate down a level.
And, prosecutors say that Rhiana had a gunshot wound to her hand that's likely consistent with a defensive wound, which I think means that she probably may have seen her killer right before she was shot. And prosecutors also allege that Emilio broke into the home. And these are very serious allegations. If he is convicted on these charges or if he ends up taking a plea on these charges, what do you think he's facing in terms of possible prison time?
Well, if he gets convicted of first degree murder, it's mandatory life in prison. If he gets convicted of second degree murder, it's most likely it will be in the 20-year range, 20 to 25.
As a criminal defense attorney, what is it like to kind of defend a client who is accused of something so heinous, especially if this case were to go to trial? I know we're still in the early stages, but if the case were to go to trial.
Well, as a defense attorney, this is what we do all the time. So, and again, we don't defend criminals. We defend the Constitution of the United States because we're the one thing standing between law enforcement and the citizens. And so, if we're not there, we're the police's police. If we're not watching the police and making sure they're not violating your rights, then at some point it turns into a Gestapo state where people can just kick your door down and come take you out with no warrant, no nothing. And so that's what we do is we defend the Constitution of the United States. Everybody deserves a defense, and we provide it.
And in situations where the suspect is an ex-partner of the victim, how might prior incidents like restraining orders or possible documented domestic violence history, how does that impact defending a client like this, or even in the other frame, possibly prosecuting a client, or a defendant like this?
Well, the prior bad acts are excluded unless there's some exceptions. Okay. Now, again, if it's a clear pattern of domestic violence, the prosecutor can probably use it. And where it makes it difficult for the defense attorney is it's much easier to get a plea bargain where your client has no prior criminal history, no violent history, no nothing, than it is with somebody that's got restraining orders and multiple prior domestic violence convictions. So it makes it more difficult.
And how harmful do you think that the tire slashing will be? I know these are just allegations right now, but do you think that'll kind of set up another kind of layer to this case in terms of defending Emilio Rivera if this case were to go to trial?
Well, yeah, and again, if they can show that he actually did the tire slashing, then that those are going to be prior bad acts. I don't know that they will come in if there's a trial on the murder case. That I would fight really hard to keep that out. But when in the plea bargaining, it really makes it hard because again, these are violent acts with a weapon destroying people's property. And it's involving the same victim. So it's going to make it really difficult to get a good plea in the case.
And I also want to ask, as we talk about this case, I just can't help but notice that the defendant is very young, 18 years old, and the victim is also very young, 17 years old. In terms of just defending a teenager, what is that like, especially for one who may not know all the rights that they may have, or who may end up possibly saying a little too much to investigators that maybe to a defense attorney they wouldn't have liked them to say? But what is it like to defend a client who is still relatively young?
Well, let me be clear. Older people say too much to
Oh,
police
yeah.
all the time
Okay.
too. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, they are a little less worldly. Okay. And the thing is, the main mitigation for people this young charged with crimes is, the portion of the brain that says maybe I shouldn't do this doesn't fully form until around 25. And so, so they're still, their impulse control is really poor. And and you add drugs and alcohol to that, and you end up with some pretty bizarre results.
Oh, yeah. And in terms of what do you think will happen next in the case, what do you think will happen next in the case? I know we're still relatively early. The the charge only happened just a couple weeks ago, but what are your thoughts on what could happen next?
Well, they're going to go through a series of pretrial conferences and discovery. So they've got to get all the discovery. They got to disclose all the evidence that they have against him, so that everything can be scrutinized. Okay, and then they'll talk about plea agreements, and they may even have a settlement conference to try to see if it's going to do it. But in hot murder cases, take a couple years.
Right.
So nothing's going to happen fast. He's going to be in custody. They're not worried about anything else happening. They may file a motion to try to lower his bond to see if they can get him out, which they probably won't be very successful on. But when you have a murder case, you got to do everything that you can possibly do for the client, so that they can't come back later and say that you were ineffective assistance of counsel.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how this case continues to unfold. Dwayne, I want to thank you so much for your time and your analysis into this. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.
Online records show Emilio Rivera is being held at the Maricopa County Jail in Arizona. His next court date is slated for November 20th. Thanks so much for tuning into this episode of Inside the Crime. I'm Elizabeth Millner.